Okay, what have we got here? Well, these are some nice comic book binders that I bought. There's 3 of these that I bought so far just to kind of protect and keep my comics organized because they don't stay upright on my bookshelf on their own. But if I can cram 10 of them in one of these, then it's worth it. So I bought these to kind of keep my stuff organized. This is that Smallville comic I did a video on a while ago. I just grabbed an extra bag and board from the store. This was, I think Skybound did like a reprint of this really old G.I. Joe comic of the very first issue. Kind of neat to have. I checked out the Real American Hero series, and it wasn't my jam. Like, even though the artwork on the covers is cool, it was one of those where they got very different artists to do the covers versus the interior stuff. I wasn't getting into the story, so I scratched that one off of my pull file. But the main G.I. Joe stuff that's out right now from Skybound is here. So you've got these 5 Duke books. That was issue 1, 2 through 5. These are all coming out, if they haven't already, then it'll be out really soon, in a trade paperback. And the same is true for Cobra Commander, which there's a solo Cobra Commander story here. And you kind of get his soft origin. They start with the weird stuff, which is Cobra Law, which is this, I guess it's where all the Cobra stuff originated in the original cartoon or whatever, but they're working it into here. It's one of those things that can be kind of a weird holdover from the 80s, but they didn't want to just break lore and erase it, so they included it in there, but they made it a little bit less weird, and then quickly got out of that and got into the real world. And then Scarlet #1 and Destro #1 dropped this month. So what's the story with these? Well, between all these different G.I. Joe one-offs and Void Rivals and Transformers, you've got what's called the Energon universe. All of these exist and they overlap. In fact, in Duke #1, and we'll get into this in Transformers in a minute, what's Duke doing? Well, he's already established as an effective soldier and an elite and all that. This is a hard angle to draw, and it feels like they didn't quite get it. Like, you could almost convince me that his chest is facing backward, like this is his back we're looking at, but the arm's weird and the footing's weird. It's just that perspective is tricky. But he's being debriefed about something that happened. He was flying backseat in a fighter jet, and they got attacked by Starscream and hit the ejector seat, and Starscream killed the pilot. Duke got away because he's got his flying pack and all that. And the military's telling him, like, you didn't see what you saw. And he's like, bull crap, I got to go get justice for my friend. And so he's out on a tear, and there's a manhunt after him. And he's convinced that there are big, gnarly transforming robots out there. And the hunt for military robots leads him to Destro, the Cobra adjacent villain who makes weapons for Cobra. And he's building the battle android troopers from G.I. Joe. But he's hard up to find a power source for them. And suddenly he comes across Energon, which is something that Cobra Commander brought to him, because Cobra Commander, inexplicably, and we're still waiting for the full story of how this happened, but Cobra Commander happens to have Megatron in his custody. Where the heck is that? Does it happen in this one? Yeah. Cobra Commander's got an inert Megatron who's missing his arms. And we're seeing how all these threads kind of weave together, how the G.I. Joes connect to the Transformers, and what that's going to mean ultimately as all these stories continue their overlap. The Scarlet book, she's kind of off in her own territory. Turns out that she and Jinx used to be roommates, and then Jinx went AWOL, and now Scarlet is hunting her down, and she's embedded with the ninja clan that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are from, the Ashkaragi. I can never remember that one off the top of my head. And then the Destro comic just started this month. I really liked Duke and Cobra Commander. I thought that Scarlet was okay, and the Destro one kind of left me wanting a little bit more, or a little bit something better. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how they develop. But if they're going to keep doing single storylines about individual G.I. Joe characters, I've got to think that they'll eventually have a Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow story running concurrently, because those are 2 of the most popular characters, and their histories are very profoundly intertwined. Before I get into the Transformers one, let me show you Void Rivals. So I'd heard that this was coming out from Skybound, but I didn't immediately know that it was connected to the Energon universe, and I didn't bother looking it up until I found out that, oh no, it's connected, and some of the Transformers characters are going to appear. There's Shockwave, the Quintessons show up there. Sorry, let me get the glare off of that. I'm recording in the shop, and I'm kind of directly under a light. But the Quintesson Council there, this is a character in world. Same character, Proximo. There's like a 3-issue arc there that the story kind of lost its momentum. but it finally snapped out of it when they meet Springer here randomly. It's not exactly clear why there are Transformers in this Void Rivals series or what they have to do necessarily with the other elements of the Energon universe. But when I found out that it was connected, I went to the comic shop and they had already had like 5 or 6 issues out. So I went ahead and bought them. They had them all in stock. And I was surprised at how good it was and how it was almost one of my favorites. It is one of my favorites in this overall series. Our main character guy here, his name is Derek. He's got this robotic glove called the Hand Droid that's kind of sassy and talks back to him, but it can also operate even when he's unconscious. He crash landed on this planetoid, and so did somebody from a rival territory. Her name is Salila. They both crashed their ships after a dogfight on this planetoid, and they ended up having to team up to salvage both of their ships and put something together that can get them off their planet and get them back home. They're home. Let me see if there's a picture of it in here. Oh, they randomly encounter Jetfire, but he's like, nope, don't know what you guys want, and he just pisses off out of there. So a quick connector to the Transformers universe, and then bye, I'm out of here. They find out that they're the same species, even though they're from what's pitched as 2 different worlds. But they've got to rely on each other to get off this planetoid, or they're both dead. So a familiar trope, but the execution is done very, very well. The question is, can they all trust each other? Derek is a little bit more trusting than Salila is. But the more they work together and then eventually make contact with their home worlds and their superiors, the more they find out that they've been lied to about a lot of things. This is where the name Void Rivals comes from. Their planet was rebuilt into a giant ring around a black hole. As the planet was dying, we get the backstory here. It was broken up into the rings that were then put around the dead star, so they would have energy, their worlds would survive, but there are these barriers at the top and at the bottom of the ring, and she's from one side and he's from the other, and never the twain shall meet, but then they do, and now they start pulling at the thread, and there's more going on than that, hence the title Void Rivals. So what all does it have to do with the Transformers and stuff? Well, we're 9 issues in, and it's not terribly clear just yet, and I'm enjoying the overall story, but as has happened with all of these, you get a couple of issues in, and like the initial excitement and the revelations and stuff kind of tampers down, and then you move a little bit slower in between, and then something big will happen. You're like, okay, we're finding the story again. So yeah, I guess my only real complaint is there are some pacing issues from time to time, but the artwork is still good, and I'm excited and intrigued enough to keep going. Energon Universe, this was a single special. This is where a whole bunch of different things start to cross over. Hence it's issue 1, but I guess we'll get one of these like every, 3 to 6 months. But these are the covers for the main Transformer storyline. Starts with Optimus. We've got Starscream from when he killed Duke's friend. Flashbacks, or no, this is not a flashback. This is not Cybertron. We start getting that stuff later. Wheeljack and Cliffjumper. There's a really cool development where Optimus gets his arm blown off, but they've got Megatron's in storage, and so he puts Megatron's arm on, and blah, blah, blah. That cover, I will tell you right now, is very misleading about how the fight goes with Soundwave and Starscream. That might look like RC. That is actually Elita 1, a lesser-known character. And then we get a very cool development here. I did a write-up over on Upstream about when the first 2 issues of this were out, about how, man, I'm so mad. Like, after reading these ones, I'm so mad at how the Transformers movies have gone, because Daniel Warren Johnson knows what the heck he's doing. He's able to tell the story from the comics where the Ark crash lands on Earth, and the robots have been inert forever, and then humans find it, and they wake it up, and now there's good guy robots and bad guy robots, and kind of bold of this series to immediately grief Bumblebee so he doesn't wake up. And now the hunt is on to constantly find Energon to power both sides, one so that they can get home, the other side so that they can conquer Earth. We meet Carly and Spike. There's no Michaela. Carly was the human girl from the original cartoon. And from there, it's just breakneck grapple fighting between the Autobots and the Decepticons, with the humans caught up in between. The humans, Spike and Carly, are the only ones that really have any confidence in the Autobots. Spike's dad, Sparkplug, is a GWAT veteran. And when he sees robots messing with the power supply, he and the other buddies down at the VFW go and get their gear, and they don't trust the robots either. And there's great inter-character conflict. And I thought the story in this is done so well. It would have been really cool if they'd gotten actual comic writers or talented writers at all to write any of those movies. Instead, they got Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, guys that are only capable of killing franchises. I'll link that review in the description down below. But all of these comics have been very, very cool, even when they've been slow. And there's a reason why I keep shilling out a few bucks a week every time I pass by the comic store coming back from that route. I just pop in and drop $5-10, pick up whatever the issues are, and stay abreast of it all. Used to be that I would just buy the trade paperbacks, which are like printed omnibuses of 5 or 6 volumes, depending on what the comic is. But I like funding this and supporting this as it goes, because that helps you to get more of it. All we've heard for the last like 7 or 8 years is how bad comics have been, and they have been bad. But it seems like at least pockets of the industry are really focusing on the fundamentals. Let's get talented writers, let's get visionaries, let's get actual fans of these IPs to write these IPs, to not damage the lore, but to expand on it and to enrich it. And the expansion and the enrichment here comes from, let's have this Void Rivals series, let's have the G.I. Joe come in, and let's have it all be concerned with Energon and see what happens. I think Transformers issue 10 will come out in July. Same with Void Rivals. They started up at the same time. And we'll get issue 2 of Scarlet and Destro next month as well. But I'm feeling rewarded for my loyalty so far. And that's a good feeling, because loyalty that I've had to other IPs of late has not been thusly rewarded. I've done videos on Rook Exodus. I did volume 1 and volume 2, or issue 1. I can't remember. I think volume if it's a compendium, and issue if it's single, whatever. This one is really freaking awesome. The aesthetic, the story. I don't care that it's $5-6 or whatever with the bag and board, because they're printed on good quality paper, and the artwork is sharp and crisp and superb and detailed. I'm a little bit less high on this Redcoat one than I thought I would be. I'm intrigued with the setting, but I'm so far like having trouble caring terribly much about the main character. But here's a plot twist. I said I wasn't going to read this one. I said I had no interest in a nuclear apocalypse type story, but the hint that came from Junkyard Joe about the connection to Geiger and how much I love Junkyard Joe made me want to try it out, and the comic shop had the first 3 issues. So I picked it up, and holy crap, I'm hooked. I'm actually enjoying Geiger way more than I'm enjoying Redcoat. It's part of this Unnamed series, and timeline-wise, this one is set ambiguously 25 years in the future. There's some kind of post-apocalyptic thing. We're in a nuclear wasteland, and this dude Geiger has the ability to light up like that. He's got this power, and he just decides to go from place to place and help people. There's this dude here, his name is Nate, the Nuclear Knight. I feel like there's some backstory here, and I went and looked it up, and sure enough, a couple of years ago, under a slightly different imprint, I think called Mad Ghost, there was a run of a book called Geiger, and it's now in a trade paperback like the Junkyard Joe book was. I've since bookmarked that one. I'll have to go back and buy that to find out what I'm missing from this. I was able to jump into this and get enough of the story to have what's self-contained here, but also to know that there's more coming before it. So if that all makes sense, I'll get that. But so far, I'm enjoying what's right here. But Nate wants to team up and go with Geiger to wherever he's going. Geiger doesn't think that there's a cure for whatever he's got going on. This is where we're at now. Geiger walks across America. We did the Junkyard Joe thing. So there are other books that are going to come along here. And I'm in. I'm all in. Jeff Johns is credited as a writer on all 3 of these series. And I'm thinking that he's, and Junkyard Joe, I'm thinking that he's the strong link here. I don't know what contributions necessarily, like Gary Frank, Brad Anderson, all of them have to these different series. I don't know if they're also writers or also illustrators or whatever. But whatever they're doing, it's freaking working. One thing that just hit me right in the perfect emotional note about Geiger issue 3. Oh, it starts out with a flashback to Junkyard Joe, and it turns out he's still online 25 years in the future, but he's in this nuclear wasteland now, and he's met Simon from Redcoat, and Simon's like, hey, you got to go fix something. He goes back to Muddy Davis's house. Muddy Davis and the neighbors are all long gone, but he finds his helmet, he puts it on, and he's going to go do his thing. Meanwhile, one eccentricity about Geiger is that he goes from library to library to read books in a series, and wherever he's going, he's always reading a book. I'm like, oh, my dude. And he says so because libraries are the one thing that weren't pillaged and scoured for resources in the apocalypse. People didn't care so much about books as much as they cared about other things, so he's always able to find whatever series he's reading as he goes. The problem is whenever he lights up green and goes nuclear like that, anything that he's touching burns. I love the details here. Actual books by actual authors. Loic McMaster Bujold is in there. Clive James. I mean, there's perfect. But one thing that Nate, the nuclear knight, doesn't understand is why Geiger bothers reading. And Geiger's like, well, I'm not going to explain it to you. Well, after he's burned up like a second or third copy of a book that he's trying to read, one night he's sleeping, and Nate goes out and he finds another library and he comes back with books and he's like, hey, I remember the book that you were reading. And he picks up a book from when he was a child, from the Velveteen Rabbit. And he's just like, I get it now. Books take you to another place. And especially because the place where they're at is really freaking bad. And it was a nice little emotional touch, just something to round out and develop these characters better. And I was like, all right, I'm not so worried about the grunginess of this setting that I've read so many times before I didn't care about, because the characters and the quality, the depth, and all that stuff, what I'm really looking for is there. And it feels like whether we're talking about an apocalypse 25 years from now, or some supernatural stuff 200 years ago, or something crazy happening on another planet, Jeff Johns and this team of creators, they know what the heck they're doing. And that gives me confidence that it's going to continue being good. And that's why I'm here shelling out money for comics week in and week out. But that's what I'm reading right now. It seems like these are all under Image or Skybound, so they're getting a lot of my money every freaking month. This is what I'm going to try to confine myself to, because we are still living in a bad economy, and I got mouths to feed, so got to be prudent. But the time investment and the money investment that I'm putting into these is rewarded, and I love it. So these are the ones that I would recommend. Let me know what you guys think. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.